Pokémon music has always held a special place in my heart, and game after game they never fail to turn out banger soundtracks. There's just something about the whimsical, adventurous tunes that fills me with the best kind of nostalgia. So I figured, since Scarlet and Violet came out kinda recently, and we're just in time for Pokémon Day 2023, why not make a video about Pokémon music? Oh, sorry, hang on a second. What? Sorry, what's that?
It was half a year ago?
Okay, so this video might be a little bit later than I planned it to be, but to that I say Pokémon music is timeless, and it's never too late to talk about it. This was all a part of my plan. In all seriousness, there is one side of Pokémon music that I've wanted to do a video on for a long time now, and that's the fight themes against the legendary Pokémon. These grandiose, mysterious, epic battles seem to hold a different kind of weight than your average Bidoof fight. Obviously. Like, of course, fighting a legendary Pokémon is always going to hit a little different, but I really want to dig into how the music lends to that impact. So, I've gathered a few examples of these tracks from across the franchise, so I can dig into each one and find out what makes them so legendary. A few things immediately come to my mind when I think of the Ruby and Sapphire soundtrack. Intricate, synthesized instrumentation, determined driving root themes, and trumpets. So many trumpets. But the theme I want to talk about here uses the aesthetic of Hoenn's music in a different, almost alien way. Welcome to the Regi fights. The theme for the legendary Titans opens with a disorienting flurry of chromatically descending perfect fourth intervals, above a short, four-note motif that eventually becomes the backbone of this piece. This whirlwind of notes transitions straight into the main motif, which is repeated as a menacing ostinato pattern that continues for the rest of the track. An ostinato is a short melodic and rhythmic pattern that is repeated over and over, often forming a kind of backbone for the music. In this track, the ostinato contrasts the frantic opening and lets the player know that these guys are not messing around. Now, in case you forgot we were in Hoenn, we have trumpets. Digital brass comes in to give us our first real melody beginning in C# minor. This isn't the triumphant fanfare you might hear in other areas of the game. This melody is powerful and menacing, just like the Regi Trio themselves. After it plays through once, this melody modulates up to D minor, taking advantage of the fact that the original tonic C# also functions as a leading tone in this new key. This allows the melody to transition seamlessly. You might not even notice the modulation if the ostinato didn't move up a semitone as well. You hear how the switch is kind of smooth and jarring at the same time? Even though they are only a semitone apart, C# minor and D minor are actually quite distinct keys, moving from 4 sharps to 1 flat, making 5 notes that are totally different between the two keys. Put all that together and you get a boss theme that fits the Regis perfectly, one that's equal parts disorienting and menacing. Moving on, time to fight the devil. Fun fact about me, I've actually never played through any of the Sinnoh games. Even so, there's no way I wouldn't be familiar with Giratina's boss theme. Its complexity and intensity probably makes it one of my favorites, and it gets wacky right off the bat. The track opens with this little syncopated riff based on the G-flat major pentatonic scale, which is fine and all, but once the bass comes in, well, I'll just let you hear it. Wow, that's jarring. Any music theory nerds out there probably would have noticed that the key we're in isn't actually G-flat major, but instead C minor. So not only is this a major pentatonic riff in a minor key track, but this opening is specifically built on the key a tritone away from the home key of the track. For those of you maybe out of the loop, the tritone is one of the most dissonant intervals in Western music, so to set a melody against a bass line a tritone away is a surefire way to build a really harsh kind of intensity. This is an example of a compositional tool called polytonality, where 2 or more keys are used at the same time, in this case G-flat major against C minor. This track is filled with little tricks like this, but I'm going to jump ahead to my favorite example midway through. Take a listen. Okay, so what the heck just happened here? It's tricky, but it works wonders. Once the flute enters, The track gradually starts to slow down until it reaches about half tempo, or at least it feels that way. Instead, we've actually just jumped back to the original tempo, marked by this crazy chromatic bass line that comes barreling in. This jump in tempo is very hard to notice at first. This is because half tempo is really just a different way to feel the original tempo. Hey, it's Mackenzie from the future with an unscripted editor's note. I think I was wrong about this track. I don't think the tempo actually fluctuates upon listening to it during editing, but I think it still plays with a perceived tempo. So even though the track itself doesn't change speeds, the way it's written makes you feel like it does. For example, like when I listened to it several times while scripting, I definitely thought that it was changing tempo. So it's kind of a nice case study on how you can play with perceived tempo rather than actually changing the speed. But continue watching my flawed ideas from 4 months ago. Anyway, bye. It almost feels like the composer deceived us and lulled us into a false sense of security before hitting us with a wave of intensity at the most peaceful moment. This is also just an ingenious way to play with fluctuating tempo in a looping track, and it works wonderfully for the god of the distortion world. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet brought a fully open world to the franchise for the first time, and it has a soundtrack to match, and with the new region comes a new set of legendaries. This is the music of the Ruin Quartet. This track draws its mystique from its use of instrumentation that is unconventional in Western music, something we can hear in the very first measures. As a quick disclaimer, I am much more comfortable in my understanding of Western music, so if any of you are experts on any of the musical genres I'm going to talk about here, please chime in the comments if you have any corrections. That mysterious drone that plays before the beat comes in is from an instrument called a tempura, an instrument that is common in Indian classical music. Traditionally, the tempura provides a continuous drone for other instruments to play over, so it works quite well here to set the scene for the rest of the track. The harmony in this theme is based on the B double harmonic major scale, or at least that's what I'd call it using the conventions of Western classical music. This isn't exactly the most standard scale in Western music, but if we look again at Indian classical music, it is much more commonplace. In this Indian scale, or raga, called Bhairav, you can hear harmonic ideas that are similar to the ones heard in the Ruin Quartet theme. Jumping ahead a little, we hear a new texture with this percussion instrument playing a pentatonic scale. At first, when I heard this, I thought the composer pulled in a toy piano out of nowhere. While it does sound similar to a toy piano for sure, to me the scale makes it sound a lot more like a traditional Indonesian gamelan ensemble, particularly one using the Pelog tuning system. Take a listen to this example and see if you can hear any similarities. At this point, some of you might be thinking, so what? Sure, this track is inspired by traditional Asian music, but what does that have to do with the cool legendary Pokemon fights? And yeah, fair enough. I honestly just think that utilizing all these different musical traditions is a cool way to set the scene for this fight against 4 ancient monsters. And I think it's especially effective because the composer didn't cheapen any of the styles that the music is based on. When you compare these traditional styles of music to what we hear in Scarlet and Violet, it's clear that the adaptations in the soundtrack are never caricatures and are really quite faithful recreations of traditional Asian music. The Pokemon sound team clearly did their homework and it paid off in spades. Now, it's true that Scarlet and Violet are the most recent games in the series, but I really had to save this one for last, and I think you'll understand why. I'd be lying if I told you that the Alola games were my favorite in the franchise by any stretch, but the music that plays alongside the final boss fight with Ultra Necrozma is very possibly my favorite legendary theme in the series. The track opens with this melody in octaves played on electric guitar and organ. This melody makes a strong statement that defines the rest of the track right from the beginning. This plants us firmly in C minor, which becomes even more clear a few bars later when the bass line comes in with a C minor scale and whole notes. However, once we hit the second bar, we get a bit of ambiguity with this A natural. This note is the sharp 6, a note not normally found in C minor. Being placed there in this melody evokes a sound that's slightly brighter than minor, borrowed from the Dorian mode. To me, this little breakaway from a purely minor tonality is a reminder that hope is not quite lost yet. This whole figure repeats a few times, and with each repetition it ramps up the complexity little by little, and really drives home that this melody is the main theme. Until, suddenly, things aren't feeling quite so hopeful anymore. The moment that you get used to the main theme, it gets ripped away from underneath you, and you're blasted by these crazy organ chords. For the sake of time, I'm not going to get into these chords too much, but here's what I was able to kind of figure out with the help of some friends. If you're a nerd that likes music theory, feel free to pause the video and check out the harmony here. It's actually pretty neat. After this, you can really start to hear the battle between light and dark. The main theme comes back, this time played across multiple instruments and embellished by some extra arpeggiated eighth notes. The Dorian sound from before is gone, and we're also hit with this weird D-flat major chord that introduces a bit of Phrygian flair. Also, the bass line here just makes me so happy. Please pay attention to it. To finish off the track, this hopeful version of the main theme in electric organ breaks through. I don't know about you, but something about this part feels very distinctly anime opening to me. Listen to this and pay special attention to the chord progression. To me, this really does sound distinctly hopeful, but why? Each of these phrases end with a minor 5 to minor 1 progression in C minor, a move that's decidedly not hopeful. But since the 5 to 1 is preceded by this A flat major chord ascending to B flat major, everything feels a little bit more stable and a little bit less dejected. This feeling of hope reaches a peak 8 bars later when we resolve to a C major chord rather than C minor. The light has finally broken through. The track ends with one more triumphant statement of the main theme, before a percussion break brings us back to the beginning of the track. I have to admit, I am new to making analyses like these, and I'm honestly a little bit worried that I haven't done this track justice, so I will quickly give my perspective as a player and try not to overthink it. I think that the Ultra Necrozma fight theme is brilliant, probably my favorite Pokemon fight theme when you put it in context. You can hear a battle between light and dark embedded in the music, mirroring the struggle for the light of the Alola region that you're fighting for in the game. This track is a masterpiece of a legendary Pokemon theme, and I don't think it could have fit any other Pokemon better. Legendary Pokemon are on the box art of these games for a reason. The games build up towards these climactic battles against impossibly strong monsters, and the music never fails to live up to the hype. Each of these tracks accompany a hugely important moment in their respective stories, and the music adds another layer of intensity to the plot. Honestly, if I had infinite time and energy, I would have made this video 3 times as long. There are so many interesting fight themes in the franchise. Reshiram and Zekrom's pulls themes from other songs in the game. Lugia and Ho-Oh's themes contrast each other in such an interesting way, and the black and white legendary theme messes with the tempo even more than Giratina's did. But if I talked about all that, I would be looking at like a yearly upload schedule, and while my once every 1,000-month strat isn't the best in the world, trust me when I tell you it could be worse. But who knows, maybe if enough of you let me know your favorite legendary theme in the comments, this video could get a part 2. But only if you like, subscribe, comment, share, comment again, rate, share on Facebook. All in all, I had a blast trying to figure out what makes these themes tick. Hope you enjoyed coming along for the ride.
Wait, hold on, don't leave. For the past month or so, me and my friend have been working on this podcast called Stages of Sound, where we talk about different video game soundtracks each month. So if you ever want more video game music content, but you don't want to wait the 1,000 months between my uploads, feel free to check it out. The Spotify and YouTube links are in the description, but you can find it anywhere that you get your podcasts. Anyway, that's all I had. Get out of here. Go watch my other videos or something, I don't know.